Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 3 of 7 podcast. Before we dig into today's awesome episode, I want to tell you guys about a couple companies that support this podcast. We'll start with a company called Rugged Meats. So I've been using Rugged Meats for about the last 2 months to power me and fuel me on my missions. Rugged Meats is a healthy snack company that is committed to providing you and your family with only the absolute highest quality products. So they make some awesome snack sticks. They've got multiple products. If you're an omnivore like me, you might be interested. All of their snack stick products are made with 100% grass-fed beef and pasture-raised pork from small American family farms. The taste and the flavor is outstanding. I particularly like the pineapple pork. It's just got a really good, almost like a, not super sweet, but just right when you've been out on the trail for hours and you need something that's really going to stick to your ribs. So check them out. They just make awesome products. Like I say, I have used them extensively. I think I've tried everything in their product line. And again, just super high quality ingredients. Another thing, Rugged Meats was started by a firefighter and a nurse. They've got a great backstory, just great Americans that have decided to create this product based around their passion. So if you're interested in trying some Rugged Meats products, please check them out at ruggedmeats.com. They have provided us as 3 of 7 podcast listeners with a pro code that will give you 10% off of your purchase along with free shipping. That pro code is 3 of 7. That's the number 3 of 7. So if you hike, if you run, if you work, especially a crazy job like fireman, police officer, a nurse, and you're on your feet and you need a quick snack just to get your energy up and get you through the day, these products are going to be perfect for you. Let me know what you think about Rugged Meats. Their website and their social media handle will be attached in the show notes of this episode. The next company I want to talk to you guys about is Xoskin. So Xoskin is a huge supporter of 3 of 7 podcast. They have been since the beginning. And all their products are outstanding. I mean, I have pretty much one of everything in their product line, and it all functions exactly as advertised and meets and exceeds my expectations for functionality and durability. But I want to highlight one specific product within their line, and that's the Xoskin toe socks. These socks were a game changer for me. The first few races that I did, specifically the first 100-miler that I did, I wasn't so keen on how important the right sock was. And I came out the other end of that race and my feet looked absolutely horrific. And actually took, a few weeks for them to get back to normal. And so since I have started wearing Xoskin socks, it's just not a problem anymore. I don't have near the issue with blisters or hot spots that I used to have, when wearing other brands of socks. These things function when your feet are wet, when your feet are dry, in dusty conditions. I mean, I've ran these socks through the mill for thousands of miles. Super durable. They last probably, I don't know, they've done the science, but I'm going to say 10 times longer than your average sock would last. So it's the only thing that I'll put on my feet. Check them out. Not only the socks, check out the whole product line. on their website at xoskin.us. And I will also link their website and Instagram handle in the show notes of this episode. Xoskin has provided us with a pro code. Again, that is 3 of 7. That's the number 3 of 7. And that will give you 25% off of your purchase until the end of April. Don't think you'll be disappointed with Xoskin. I don't promote any products on this podcast that I don't personally use on a regular basis and that I'm not familiar with and that I'm not a believer in. I can promise you that. So, thanks for your time. Let's get into today's episode. Hope you enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 3 of 7 podcast. We got a really special episode for you guys today. It's titled A Long Day in the Cohuttas. And so what the Cohuttas, what does that mean? So I'm sure Nathan will introduce himself in a minute, but the Cohutta Wilderness Area is a place here in North Georgia, and it is a wilderness area, so that's the highest classification of preservation that they can possibly give a piece of federally owned land. So it's a really, really just completely wild place. And last weekend, me and 4 of my dear friends went and spent a long day in the Cohuttas. And I think this was the 3rd annual. It was organized by Mr. Nathan. And, it was an awesome day. So this is just the after actions report about the lessons that we learned, the things we learned about each other, the time we spent in the wilderness. And I think we all came out the other side way closer than we expected to be. So, I've got everybody here. It was amazing because usually to get a group of 5 dudes together is like herding cats. But, it was like one text message and everybody from the team was like, Roger that, man. We'll be there. So thank you guys for coming. I want y'all to introduce yourself real quick. Start with you, Luke.
I'm Luke Baker. I'm from here in Rome, Georgia. This is where I live. So it was good to get together with these guys and take part in this experience.
What do you do for a living, Luke?
I'm an electrical contractor here in Rome. Yeah,
awesome, brother.
So.
And this was, you said, a big-time PR on this.
It was,
right?
Yeah. Probably 10 or 12 miles was the most I'd traveled in a day on foot. So, this was a long day for me for sure.
But solid CrossFit's your thing, right? So you're coming from a good, strong base of CrossFit, right?
I do enjoy CrossFit, yeah. And I was a former wrestler when I was younger, and so, I like a little challenge, mental challenge as well as much as a physical challenge. So
totally, brother. Nathan, what's up, man?
Hey, I'm Nathan. We've been in Rome, my wife and I, for I guess about 17 years. Originally from the Panhandle of Florida, and moved around a little bit and have settled here and enjoy it. And I'm work for an organization in town called Higher Ground that uses adventure to develop people, and kind of does that in a number of different ways, and been doing that for about 13 years with Higher Ground.
Yeah, so Nathan was, like I said before, he was the organizer and leader of this trip. And one thing I'll say about Nathan is he's a squared away dude. There's very few men that I will go blindly into the wilderness with. But when Nathan invited me on this trip, like, I didn't need to look at the maps. I didn't need to know where we were going, what we were doing. He is squared away enough dude that I said, I will go and follow this man through this wilderness. So that's my 2 cents on Nathan.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, and you guys will get to hear more from Nathan later on. So, Kincaid, you're not allowed to introduce yourself. Jeff.
Well, I was going to say Sue to my right, but they can't see anything.
That's right.
It's Kincaid Whirl. He'd grown up in close enough to Rome, but really Adairsville, Georgia. with a fine family to raise 2 great sons, Brother Campbell. Kincaid, because he won't say it.
He's a legend.
He is a legend. My daughter calls him Matthew McConaughey. Which, hey, right there, it's a compliment. No, Kincaid, I think, undersells himself as far as his accomplishments personally. With you're in law school right now, right? You're in law school right now, but before that, man, he is a really successful kayaker. Been everywhere, right? Chile, all those kind of places. Sends videos routinely. I get the pleasure of working with his dad, and has routinely seeing him going over falls. How high is DeSoto Falls?
It's at least 90 feet.
It's at least it's high. It's something that most mere mortals would not try. But he does it like nobody's business, and
then just scoots off to class.
Right, and he's a physical specimen. Working out with him at CrossFit, we'll show up for a running wad, and I've got knee braces on and running shoes on, and here comes Kincaid in old holy Vans and just smokes us. So he's a physical, but on top of his physical, he's just a cool dude, right?
Yep.
And just low key but intense, and I get that from his dad. His dad says he's an intense guy. In fact, yesterday his dad said, "Okay, look, Kincaid's at the house, and he needs about 16 hours a day worth of physicalness. You have to find." I said, "Well, he knows Chad Wright, so maybe maybe those guys can hook up,
do something."
So I don't know what kind of introduction that was for Kincaid, but I think we all think a lot of him.
Yeah.
And so there you go.
Yeah, so the reason Kincaid wasn't allowed to introduce himself because he would have literally just said, "Hey, I'm Kincaid." And that's all you would have ever heard from him. So, Kincaid, now you get to tell the story of how your eye and your face is kind of busted up, man.
First of all, that was pretty embarrassing. I guess my eye I really appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you guys. That's really sweet. It means a lot. I think a lot of all you guys, and look up to all you guys, and certainly have learned a lot as well just over the years interacting with each and every one of you. Luke's my neighbor, just for the world to know. But I guess my eye, well, it was on DeSoto Falls a couple weeks ago. I was kind of in a group chat with some of my buddies, and we were hoping to go run it one morning. And DeSoto it's kind of in the north eastern part of Alabama, headwaters to Little River Canyon. It's a pretty unique waterfall, and one that all my friends and I really enjoy, and I get excited about when it's running. So we woke up one morning and got there a little bit before dark. It was probably like 5:30 or 6:30 in the morning, and hiked in to look at it and see if it was running. And sure enough, it was running. So we decided to give her a go, and I went first. Nobody else was really fired up on it quite yet, and we were just kind of waiting to see what happens. And I ran it first and had a pretty good line, but I think my bow must have just floated up a tiny bit as I was coming off, and had a pretty big hit at the bottom, and ended up kind of hitting the side of my head on my kayak, which left me needing to get a couple stitches. So I went over to where Jeff works and met my dad there and told him that I probably should get some stitches, and he agreed. And I got about 7 stitches and made it back for my class in the afternoon. So when I got to school, I had some questions. I think everybody had thought I got in a fight. I had 5 stitches up above my eye, and then 3 kind of in that corner right there, and a pretty big shiner underneath it. So
You got in a fight with a 90-foot waterfall on a kayak.
Yeah, I just checked. It's 104 feet.
Oh, Roger. I'm glad you Googled that, dude.
But yeah, that's the story, and really thankful for my safety crew there. They were, I felt pretty safe with them, and knew I could take a risk like that going off that waterfall because the people I was there with. So I really appreciated them, and I don't think I sold it enough. No one else ran it that day, but it'll be there.
Roger that. Thanks, Kincaid. That's an awesome story, brother. And yeah, Kincaid's got plenty of those stories. And now we want Mr. Jeff Mahoney. Tell us a little bit about yourself, brother.
Yeah. Jeff Mahoney. I've been in Rome about 13, 14 years. Grew up in Dalton, Georgia. I work at a local hospital here as an anesthetist. And let's see, I have had the pleasure of being on every one of these. I was in the inaugural Cohutta Mountain Marathon when it was just 3 of us.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
And but it was a different route that year.
Yeah,
'Cause I remember sitting in Bray Field.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we
And
were
having
on the
lunch.
Conasauga side.
That's right. But it was still fun. And then, yeah.
What do you do for a living, Jeff? Did you already say
I put
that?
people to sleep.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm an anesthetist, so
Oh.
I wake them back up, too. I mean,
Okay.
they don't keep me around long if I don't
Okay.
wake you up. So.
See, I get confused. I know what an anesthesiologist is, but I didn't.
Well, yeah, I'm a PA that only does anesthesia.
Gotcha.
Now, there is a thing called a CRNA, which is a registered nurse anesthetist. Job descriptions and what we do day to day are completely the same,
Gotcha.
depending on where we are. So,
Sweet.
but I get to work with Kincaid's dad every day.
Yeah. Awesome, brother.
Yeah, I work for a good group.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So, yeah, a little bit for the listeners, you get to kind of know who you're talking to or who you're listening to, I guess, today. And it's just always amazing to me that you can bring men and women together from all these different backgrounds. We've got Luke. He's a business owner, professional electrician. We've got Nathan. He's an outdoor guide. We've got Kincaid. That's in law school. We've got Jeff. That's a anesthesiologist. I can't say that other word, so I'm just going to call you an anesthesiologist. And then you got me. That's me, a former Navy SEAL that just moved back to this community. And these men here have chosen to embrace me and speak life into my life and show me what this area has to offer. But you can bring all these people together from all these different backgrounds, and we go to the wilderness and we inflict a little adversity upon ourselves. And all of a sudden we come out at the end of a 14, 15-hour day, and we all feel like brothers. And we've all got stories to tell. And, it was a day that I think that I knew for a fact I'll remember for the rest of my life. So, yeah, that's the way this works. Let's dig in to the long day in the Cohuttas, and I want to turn it over to you, Nathan. You put a lot into this, man. I want to turn it over to you and see where you want to kick it off, or what do you want to talk about first, man?
We can at least talk about the kind of the reasons why, or my why for doing it. So this is the third, and it ends up being almost annual or not quite annual, depending on how you want to look at it. And it really came down to probably the first trip. I was walking downtown one day, or walking to the gym, and it was like 45 degrees and raining. And it had been a little while since I'd been out, and I just remember saying to Jeff Mahoney, like, man, this would be a perfect day to be in the woods. Because it's just, the weather's just ugly enough to kind of make you feel like you're doing something, and to kind of chase the crowds away, and to give you reason to do a long day where you keep moving so that you can thermoregulate and stay warm. So that kind of got the idea churning, and it probably, the first trip probably wasn't, a month or two after that idea. And it really comes down to a combination of wanting physical challenge to some extent, which, obviously bleeds into mental challenge. And I think from that, I was thinking about it the other day. It's not so much the physical challenge as an end to itself, but what comes from it and where that takes you mentally and emotionally, and working through things and kind of bringing things to the surface. So that physical piece, or that challenge piece, and then time in the woods as best you can, away from crowds and other people, and then doing that with a group of people that mean something to you and that you either are already close to and crave time with, or people that you really think a lot of and want to spend time with them. And so I tend to be a little bit selfish with the trip, just because I'm so often taking other people out and I don't have control over who's coming, that this is, initiated kind of as therapy for me and kind of remains that way. So, this trip, there were a handful of people that had conflicts. Jeff Holloway, who I know has been on the podcast, has been on the other two. And so he's one that would have come, just schedule wouldn't allow it. And there were several others. So I almost feel like, in the New Testament when they would cast lots, but they would count that as providence in terms of who was doing something. I almost feel like scheduling serves that way for this trip. There are some people that would be great fun to have on, and schedule just doesn't allow it, which keeps the group small and I think changes the dynamic or makes the dynamic what it is intended to be. So, the first trip, I think we were just shy of, we were probably 23 miles. And the idea was like, hey, it'd be kind of fun if we had a marathon distance, even though we're not really running, we're just hiking. And so the next one, we wanted to change the route just for the sake of doing something different. And in the adjacent wilderness area called Big Frog, the namesake of that wilderness area is Big Frog Peak, which is, I want to say 4,400 feet, something which is kind of tallish for this part of the country, certainly for North Georgia. So I started looking and found a route where we could, without running a shuttle, we could grab that peak, which is the trail up it is, you get a ridge feel and kind of hike the ridge line. So it's a cool feel to it, and then drop down. And the Cohutta is often known kind of for the two watersheds that run through it. So you get a lot of creek crossings and the beauty that comes with that. So the idea of linking up both kind of a higher mountain feel with the creek stuff seemed ideal. And so it ends up being, I think technically it's probably just shy of 30 miles, but given some of the difficulty of the terrain, I feel comfortable just calling it 30.
I feel comfortable calling it like 35 since we literally had to crawl over, no kidding, I'd say over 500 blowed down pine trees.
It was unreal.
It was unreal.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no. So that, it's one of those things you look, okay, 30 miles, and you think, well, we can move, even hiking, like we can move 3 to 4 miles an hour pretty quick. And then you go do it and you find like, oh, well, this section of trail, which I was counting on being clear, I can't go 10 feet without crawling over a bunch of trees. And then the river crossings take time. So it is, I told a friend about it that's familiar with the Cohutta the first time we did it, and he said, that's a lot of miles. The Cohutta doesn't give up mileage very easily. And I would say that we probably all found that to be true Saturday. So it's, you never know what each section's going to be like. And there were certainly a couple of sections this go around that I expected to be one way, and you get to them and you're just like, well, I guess that's not how it's going to be today. Take what you got.
That's the truth. And I think it's worthy to say, these trails that we were on, these were literally just a trace of a trail. And they're not allowed, because it's a wilderness area, they're not allowed to maintain these trails with mechanical tools. So any trail maintenance that's done has to be done with an axe.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big reason that the trails aren't maintained. But it's to guys like us, I think that's a rewarding thing to be able to go out in a truly wild place. It's not like a national park where you just got these groomed trails and it's hard packed. And after dark, man, we were having to work as a team to just keep up with the trail, where the trail went. That was awesome. And, so Nathan kicked us off first thing in the morning. First of all, drive in, we saw a big black hog, that wild boar. That was pretty cool. And we're coming up this gravel road, and Luke decided to drive his 4-door flatbed 1-ton truck, and he made it up through there. I don't know how he did, man, but he got up there. And Nathan kicked us off with a really good prayer and a scripture. And I don't know if you have that, Nathan, or if you want to look it up.
Yeah, I can pull it up, or
yeah.
It's out of Deuteronomy 8. I can at least share the gist of it. And it's essentially, talking about Israel saying that the Lord took them into the wilderness to humble them, and not just to humble them for the sake of that, but to provide for them through means that they didn't even know about. And then it names manna. So humbling, and then providing for them so that they might know that man does not live by bread alone, but by the every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. And so I find, trips into the wilderness to be an active resignation or submission to what the Lord has for you that day. Technology lets us shield ourselves from the weather a little bit, but you're kind of openly just saying, I will take what you have and trust that I will be humbled either through challenge or seeing the grandeur of Christ revealed through creation, and knowing that I'll be provided for in my need as well, and see the Lord that way. So someone probably pointed me to that passage of scripture a number of years ago, and it just seems appropriate to start every trip into the woods with that. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, that was powerful, man, definitely. And so I want to talk through that climb up Frog Mountain. And is that what it's called? Big Frog. I want to talk through that climb up Big Frog. That's a serious climb, man. What you guys got? Lessons learned. I mean, that was right off the bat. That was like gut check right there. Like, all right, roger that. What'd you learn on Big Frog,
Everyone's
Luke?
looking at Luke.
What'd you learn on?
Yeah, because we.
I mean, I think that was. I mean, that was a hard climb for everyone, but for me personally, I mean, I have the luxury that all I do is run and hike in the woods, so. It was a hard climb to me. Like, my legs were burning, and all I do is go run around the mountains all day, every day. So I know if my legs were burning, Luke's a CrossFit guy. I knew. I was thinking about Luke. I was like, if my legs are burning, Luke's legs got to be burning, man. So what'd you think about that, brother? What was going through your mind on the way up right there? How'd you feel about it?
Yeah, it was pretty tough for me straight out the gate. Honestly, I was questioning why I was there in that moment and wondering what the rest of the day was going to be like, in the first 2 hours. It was honestly really tough for me to hydrate going uphill there, just because I was winded. And we weren't stopping, so we just kept moving, And I ended up dropping back with Mahoney, and I think he could feel what I was feeling, and he was.
I've seen it before.
Yeah, and he just gave me some encouraging words there, and we made it, and once we got to the top, it's a long downhill stretch, rehydrate, get some nutrition back in you, and kind of start getting ready for the next climb. So it was a tough moment for me in the beginning there. I was questioning why I was there early on, because I seemed to be struggling a little more than the rest of you guys, in those first couple of hours. So,
well, and Luke, you were really, man, you were really hammering. I'd say 75% of the way up that climb, man, and it was maybe just the last 25%. Because I remember I was hiking behind you, and you were right behind Nathan, I think, and you were step for step, man, the whole way. And then I remember you stopped, and then I went around you, and then that was kind of where you dropped back a little bit. But when you reached that point, man, to where it got really hard, but you still had another 1,000 feet to climb, like, what was going through your head? What tactic did you use? What was it? That brotherhood? I don't want to suggest anything. What did you use to get that? That last 1,000 feet or whatever it was up to the summit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was for sure what it was. I mean, I wasn't going to quit on you guys at that point. And, I went to check on Mahoney, but really I was hoping Mahoney would check on me, if I'm being honest, and so, I think that's kind of what was going on with me at that point. So
yeah.
Well, and for context, it is about 3,000 feet of elevation gain from where we parked to the top of Big Frog in just a handful of miles, and pretty I mean, the road walk wasn't that steep, so I think you gain. Most of the grade is once you hit the trail.
Yeah,
it doesn't stop for sure.
Yeah, for sure, man, no doubt.
I think one thing that was really helpful early on, one of the things Nathan shared with me was to kind of be mindful of where I was placing my feet, and what I was placing them on, and make sure that the surface was solid. And seemed like such just a small little thing, but over the course of 30 miles makes a huge difference. And as I contemplated that over the course of 13, 14 hours, however long we were out there, it became more of a life lesson to me, I guess. Like, if we were always so conscious of where we were going and where we were putting our feet and the path that we were on, and the obstacles that were ahead and what we were going to overcome, and we were always so mindful of that in our lives, how much less we would stumble, and how we would be prepared to help someone else maybe who was stumbling or who was struggling. And so that was a good word early on from Nathan that just kind of hung with me all day long, and kind of made a big impression on me. Seemed like a small thing, but turned into something pretty big for me.
That's some solid gold right off the trail, man. I mean, that's amazing, brother.
It's like, it doesn't add up that much in a short day, but the fatigue that your body's going to take, just particularly your feet, over the course of, 30 miles in that many hours. I didn't want to act like Luke had never walked in the woods. I don't know what we were, I just thought about sharing it with him. It's something that probably took me a lot of years to pay attention to. But I will say about, we talk, Kincaid will undersell himself. Luke will do the same. I think when I think of asking people to go, there's got to be the right combination of fitness level and just toughness. And I knew Luke was fit enough. I also knew that, I think I told you, he suffers well. I mean, he's tough as nails. But it didn't occur to me, which I'm glad it did, Mahoney, to share with him. This isn't the whole day. We're not doing this climb for 14 hours. I think
it was good for him to hear that.
Yeah. In that moment, Mahoney's like, this is going to be the toughest climb we're going to have all day. And then I was like, that kind of gave me some assurance that,
Toughest climb without trees.
Yeah, that I could kind of hang in there, So that's a good word from Mahoney as well.
Totally, man. And I think it's fair to say that Luke was carrying a Glock 45 caliber ACP with an extra mag. And we got to the top of Big Frog, and we're like, Luke, why don't you just go ahead and shoot a mag's worth of ammunition and lighten your load a little bit? But he never did, so he carried that weight the whole way, man. Hammered down, brother. So, yeah, man, that was an awesome climb. And then I think there were probably some lessons learned for you, Jeff, or some kind of, because you went into this knowing that you had an injury or whatever you want to call it, and coming down. So going up, you were good, right?
Going up, I was fine.
Yeah.
Lungs, my knee. Yeah, so I went into it. I would say my knees was about 60%, but I went, I think maybe, I don't know what I was trying to talk myself into. I think the one reason is I love this trip so much. I love the Cohutta so much because I grew up going to the Cohutta as a young boy. It's like, I'm going on this, and at least give it a go. And so I, going up Big Frog, I was like, okay, we can do this. But when we would step off that rock every now and then, I'm like, I don't know about descending. So when, honestly, I was so glad that Luke came back to me. I mean, y'all weren't way ahead, but you were far enough ahead. I'm like, and I kept saying to myself, well, they're not getting farther ahead. So, okay, we're good here. But when Luke dropped back to me, it really helped my mind, too. I'm like, okay, now I got a buddy to talk to. And Luke and I have suffered together before doing Go Rucks and just CrossFit for years, that he and I are familiar with suffering together. So I don't know, maybe we just innately knew what to say to each other. So we got up to the top, and the descent, that first step down, I went, oh, no, because I knew how steep the descent was. And because it's steep.
Oh, yeah.
It almost seems steeper than the going up.
Yeah.
It's in some spots.
Right.
But thank goodness Nathan had brought some poles for me. And man, if I didn't have those poles, I would have been sidestepping.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but I saw myself how slow I was going. And I went, man, I've got a lot of miles and I'm going really slow on these descents. So that's when I started getting concerned about my day because having done this before, I knew the next steep descent off of
Hickory Ridge
in the dark.
Right.
I went, that's 20 more, that's 25 miles into this.
Right.
And I'm going to really be slow then. So I was like, we're going to get back at 2 a.m. Everybody's going to hate me for, slowing them down,
So you let me be that guy.
So, so I said, Luke, take my place. Avenge my death. Yeah. So it was a mentally challenging day for me because I think since we've been doing all this stuff together, I've never just stopped.
Oh no.
But I thought of you guys and I went I can't do this to the team.
Right.
And yeah. So
well, you were, so you had not worked out at all. Like you had rested it for a good week, like nothing, right?
Completely for a week, really for 2 weeks. I've
Right.
done very little, trying to, take anti-inflammatories, stretch that, because I've had surgery on that knee and I've had my meniscus repaired on that knee and did something really, I don't know. I was playing with my son. That's not really stupid, but it was something that you would go, wow, you hurt yourself doing that. So, I was just kind of trying to get ready for the trip. That's why I took a week off. So
To try to give it a go.
Yeah, I want to give myself the best chance to make this thing.
I thought it was interesting on the way up. You and Chad had not met, and so y'all were just talking. And as you were describing your job, one of the things you said, I'm a professional risk manager, which I would say suits your personality. So I thought, as the descent from Big Frog kind of began that assessment, like self-assessment of how's my knee, and what are the needs of the group, what are my needs,
right,
all that,
right. I immediately started doing that.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I get from just your situation, Jeff, was so right off the bat, man, you were honest with the group about what your weakness was going to be for that day. You were straight up, man. And so I think that's really important when we go out and work as a team. It's important to tell your team what your weaknesses are and also what your strengths are. And I think a lot of people, especially men, when we step off on a mission like this, dude, we don't want to tell each other our weaknesses. Like we don't want to say, I'm dealing with this, whether it's mental or physical. But if we don't do that, it can become dangerous when we get out in the middle of this mission. And also if we don't share our strengths, that's something like, so Kincaid is so humble. He is so humble, but he needs to, I feel like one thing that he could improve upon is sharing his strengths with others. Because if you would do that, Kincaid, if you would share your strength with the group, I'm not criticizing you. It's humility, man, and I'm totally on board with that. But then we could know, okay, we need to call upon Kincaid. We need to call upon Nathan, Luke, whoever it may be. When you're dealing with your weakness, you know who to call upon because you know what their strengths are. And then when we know each other's weaknesses, we can better help each other in the same way. So what do you think, Kincaid?
I think that's a good point. I think, like you said, just being honest and transparent with the group is probably the best way for progression to happen. And I think that's true for anything, whether it's, outside in a work environment, in academics. Being, I think, transparent and trying to help other people understand where you're at, and then is the best way to understand where other people are at as well. And like you were saying, from that point, then you can all work together. And I think a lot of that, for me, I think it is hard for me to probably open up about my own maybe strengths compared to other people's, because I wouldn't want to make that a assumption for them that I have a strength in a certain area. So I think for me I think that's a good point, something I could work on. But I think it's also just getting to know people better. Like the more you are with a group, then the more you kind of understand each person's abilities. Just time with them as well, I think, can be helpful. I feel like with Nathan and Jeff Mahoney and Luke, I've known those guys a little longer and done some, especially with Nathan, I've worked for Nathan for years with Higher Ground, and I think he knows probably my abilities pretty well. He knows not to probably give me many ropes and stuff like that on heights. I don't really like heights. So I think Nathan probably knows my abilities probably better than anybody in that group. But yeah, it definitely could have been more transparent. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, and you hit another one, man. You talk about heights, and that is one of those things that if you have a fear of heights, those are the things that we're talking about sharing with the team. You know what I mean? And that's hard to admit a lot of times, but inevitably it's going to make the mission safer and more successful if we share that stuff with each other. So, I think, Jeff, you going into it, you were totally transparent about, what you were dealing with right off the bat, man. And that allowed you to go a lot further in the mission than you would have if you would have just mentioned it halfway through that first loop, Right.
And honestly, two things. I was seriously considering just pushing through, but I was concerned about I'm just going to come out of here and definitely need surgery. If I'm doing that many descents, the rest of my meniscus is going to tear. That's what I'm thinking in my head. But the other one is, I think a lot of men do, is it's hard to share a weakness with somebody. I mean, I've known probably Nathan the longest. Well, I've known you the longest, but I've known him since he was like 11 or something. So, but to share a weakness takes some guts, because I think a lot of guys don't want to look weak in front of each other.
Right.
And I had just met you, and I'm going, yeah, Chad's going to think I'm this guy who shows up and then quits all the time, and that went through my head. And one, I had to go, well, that's not true, just because I think he's going to think that. And I had to think about, Nathan will back me up.
Yeah. Well, and that's, let's say that he did think that's not true anyway. It's not who you are.
But being as a man, I think a lot of men really don't want to show weakness.
Right. Well, and it's difficult.
It's difficult too, but there's a freedom in that. And when you can, because one, it's information, and two, it's if you're not sharing it, you're hiding it. And that's the worst thing to do, is try to hide something, because in some areas, particularly out in the woods, fake it till you make it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm glad I did. I'm glad I drove.
Well,
I've been sitting for a long time.
It's tough to say today isn't the day, even though I'm capable of this trip.
Yeah.
This just where I am and what my body is dealing with right now.
Right.
I need to make a different decision.
Right.
So we came on that big sharp descent off of Big Frog, and then we come down into this little saddle, and we get a little brief uphill. I can distinctly remember Nathan saying, "Jeff, all right, you get about 100 yards of reprieve,"
because it felt that 100 yards felt so good.
Yeah, man. So we're in this saddle, and I want Luke to tell us about his rain jacket, man.
Oh, golly. High tech, that's all we have to say.
Well, I'm usually a person that comes prepared. I usually check and double check the list, but somehow I left the house without a rain jacket. So I relied on Mahoney. his contribution was an extra poncho from, I think it was from the 1960s, probably when
Vietnam.
they first came out. But it was great. And I think around that time was when we passed another group of 3 hikers, and
Chad said, "Keep Luke in the middle so he don't see the poncho."
yeah, it was clear I was not the leader of the group at that.
I thought he got it from one of the cart boys at Publix.
This thing was a straight up clear plastic grocery bag, man. This thing was real comfortable and breathable, wasn't it, Luke?
Very, very breathable, but it also kept my pack dry, so it was great. Yeah.
Oh man, so that's when Luke got his started raining about that point pretty hard. The temperature dropped probably easy 10 degrees.
Yeah, easily.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, easy 10 degrees. So it literally went from like the morning, the hike up Big Frog, super warm. Like we kept feeling these, remember those waves of like really warm air that were hitting us?
Yeah.
Like those thermodrafts or whatever. And then we hit that saddle coming down, started raining, temperature dropped way down, and we continued to descend. And Jeff, we get all the way, that was a descent all the way to the, like.
Yeah, you drop down, if you're familiar with it, you drop down Hemp Top into the Cohutta, and then we took Penitentiary Branch
That's right.
to Jack's River, and then stopped there at lunch before our first crossing, water crossing.
Yep. And is that where we lost you, Jeff?
No, we.
Oh yeah,
It
because
was-
you did a few water crossings.
Yeah,
too.
I did a few water crossings because we did that one where you go up that rock face. You come straight to that rock face, and you have to scramble a little bit. And you know what I did notice on both my river crossings? I don't know if you guys noticed it either, but Kincaid stood there and watched each person make sure they got across. Did y'all notice that? He was like, I'm going to
The protector.
He's the protector. I was like, and I felt good because I know he's familiar with water.
Yeah.
Much more than I am. And so I noticed that he was standing right beside us. I don't know if it's because he thinks I'm an old guy, but I really appreciate it. And but then he showed us a way of getting across that I didn't know.
Yeah, so I want
That was good.
Kincaid, I want you to talk through for the listeners if they decide to go out on a mission of their own. Not only you were counting the water crossings, so I want to know how many water crossings how many we did, and these were like legit river crossings. These were legit. Like it was dangerous. So Kincaid, how many water crossings? And then I want you to talk through proper etiquette, proper safety procedures when doing a water crossing. Particularly, you mentioned if your foot gets caught under a rock in shallow water. I mean, the whole 9 yards, man, I think, because for our listeners that want to go out on an adventure, they can learn a lot of good safety stuff from you on that because you spend so much time in it, brother.
For sure. Well, to the best of my recollection, I think we had 17 pretty legitimate water crossings and, a bunch of smaller creeks, but definitely 17 solid water crossings. And as far as technique goes for, getting across those safely, I'm certainly not an expert, but I have learned a thing or two just through kayaking and paddling and just, hiking in the woods over the years. And I was telling Chad on some of those that some things that I was worried about was like foot entrapment, which doesn't sound like a huge deal. So what if your foot gets stuck in a crack in the rock? But the thing is that could happen with that is if you lose your balance or, get pushed over, which is pretty easy when you're fatigued and water's pushing on you from a different direction. You got a heavy backpack, you can lose your balance pretty quick. So if your foot's stuck and you lose your balance, then you're going to be, in the water, and it can be hard to get up if your foot's especially upstream of you and the current's pushing you downstream. It gets deeper usually, and it can just be really hard to even keep your head above water. So, that's something I'm always pretty concerned with when I'm especially moving current at all. I'm, always making sure I'm keeping track of where I'm putting my feet and what's below me and just like which direction I'm leaning. So I was telling Chad some of that. And then on a couple crossings, I'd heard Nathan talk about this trip in the past, and he made the water crossings sound pretty serious. And I was like, man, how bad can they be? There's trails going all across them. Other people have got to do them. So surely, wouldn't be too bad for, people that are experienced. But there were some pretty legitimate water crossings, especially that the last one we did at the night, I thought was pretty serious, and there's definitely some big risks there. The river was really choked down to probably, I don't know, Jack's River is probably, what do you think, 30 or 40 feet wide most places, and here it was probably about 20. It was dark, and we were all tired. We'd hiked all but 4 miles, I think, back to the car. And here, I think the current was definitely moving pretty fast, and, it was dark, and we had our headlamps on. I just thought if something happened, it'd probably be in this situation. So I kind of went across first, and I ended up choosing a different route than most people. I went down below. The water was a little more calm. It wasn't quite as rough. There wasn't as much gradient, which made me feel a little bit better just in terms of getting swept over a rapid or over bumping on some rocks or something. And I also saw a big eddy in the middle of the river that I knew I could get to pretty much just from jumping from the bank if it came to that. And it was really hard to tell how deep it was, but I just decided to go for it. And sure enough, it was pretty deep. I think I was up to about my armpits.
Tit deep, man.
But I was in the eddy, so I knew I could hang out there and kind of get my wits about me and get across to the other shore. And from that eddy, I was able to get across pretty easily. And I had a throw rope in my bag, and I just brought just because I was probably a little bit paranoid about some of these water crossings. But a throw rope in whitewater is a good way to rescue people that end up getting in the current or drifting downstream, or people that are stuck. You can, there's a bunch of different ways to use it. So I kind of got on the other bank and had that just in case somebody got swept off their feet. Crossing there, I could, hit them with the bag and hopefully bring them into shore. And then Luke was going across, and Nathan let me borrow one of his sticks, and I went out to Luke. And there's another technique that I've learned through a swiftwater rescue course I took, and it was about basically if you have more than one person, you're crossing some swift moving current, the person in the front can kind of act as a rock and make an eddy behind them. And then that person behind them can actually stand in that eddy and support the person in front of them. So it's really mutually beneficial. Luke might think he has the tough end of the deal because he's trying to hold me up, but I'm actually making it a little bit easier for him because there's a big eddy behind me. And I think you both can support each other through that. And that's a cool, I think, thing to do. And it works with more than just 2 people as well. It works better with 3 people, really, probably 3 to 4. Yeah, we did it with 4 people earlier, and I think we kind of gave up halfway through because it wasn't super.
Fell apart, dude.
You didn't really need it there, but I thought it worked really well for Luke and I later in the evening.
It did, yeah. It was great. You were the first one to cross, and I was the last one to cross, and you kind of coming back and taking care of me there was much appreciated. I was moving pretty slow at that point, and the protector in you saw a need to help. So
well, I was happy to help. I enjoy being in the water, and I was chafing pretty bad, so I didn't mind the cool water at that point.
Yeah. So I think something that you said right there, Kincaid, that really struck me, man, was that operational risk management. That was going through your head. You were looking at the conditions. You were looking at the level of fatigue within our group. You were looking at the fact that it was dark. You were taking all those factors into consideration, and you were raising or lowering, in this scenario, raising your awareness of the risk by taking an inventory of the factors that were in play in that moment. And that's super, super important, man. And that's what we do in the SEAL teams, dude, constantly. But I think there's very few civilians that their mind ticks that way. And that's why stupid stuff happens to people all the time. Stupid stuff, dude. And it's just simply because they don't manage their risk and they don't take those factors into consideration. So I think it's really cool that at that nighttime crossing, you were conscious of all those factors. And you said, if something's going to happen, it's probably going to be in this scenario. And that's the first time. I didn't even know you had that throw rope. but that's when you got the throw rope out and you were ready to rock and roll. So good on you, brother.
Yeah. It was fun because y'all, I think you were first across, Chad. Then Kincaid, me and Luke were still getting a snack or something. I was like, man, they're ready to go. I know it's late, but I want to eat something. So it was, about halfway across. When I was about halfway, I saw Kincaid moving up the bank. And it was fine. I just was like, what's he doing? Is he going to take a picture of me? But it was that, like, he was ready for action. It was fun to see. Like, he didn't make a big fuss over it or a big announcement. He was just kind of being who he is.
That's it, man. That's it.
I think a lot of that's just from being in positions where I've had to make decisions, throughout my life, especially with Nathan, trusting me with a higher ground and, his business. I've led a couple of trips for him, backpacking and climbing and just stuff like that, where, I'm in those situations where I have to manage risks for those people involved. And, I just appreciate that, having that responsibility throughout my life, with kayaking and other sports too. I've been really lucky having people, trusting me so I can, kind of learn how to manage those risks, and hopefully it'll carry on throughout my life. But
Totally, bro.
a lot of that's just having good friends and having people that trust you with stuff.
All right. The next, I guess, memorable portion of the hike for me, and you guys feel free to jump in if I missed something, but was when we came to that intersection and Jeff had to make his decision. So we came to an intersection. We had done this massive, what was like 14-mile loop.
I think that's about right.
Yeah, so we come to this intersection, and Jeff has to make a decision with the shape that his knee's in, of whether he's going to launch off on the second loop, which is a separate 14 or 15-mile loop, or he can, at this intersection, he can take the other trail that leads him up to his vehicle, which is 4 miles away. And I didn't know what you were thinking at that point. Like, I didn't know that you were going to, of course, I didn't really know where I was at in the first place. So I didn't know, like, okay, he's making a decision here of whether to launch off back out into the wilderness or take this 4 mile track back to the truck. I didn't even know that was an option right there. Yeah. So that it kind of caught me off guard, but what was going on? I know you talked through it a little bit before, but like specifically, what drove you toward that decision? What was going on in your head there, and how was that 4 miles alone back to the car, man?
Well, I think I ran it by Nathan, because he and I run things by each other quite a bit, and just in life. And I was like, "Hey, here's how I'm feeling. I knew I've done this figure eight before. I knew what was coming up, and I had to think of the long game here about my knee, and not wanting to injure it or further the injury so bad that I would have to have another surgery or anything, because there's really nobody has time for that, honestly. And then, like I said, I was like, oh golly, I'm gonna let somebody down, or they're gonna look bad at me. And I went, but then I was like, I can't. And then my wife Katie's voice came in my head too.
That's happened to me before.
Would have gone, you were really dumb to do that. Because, she double and triple checked with me. And
she would have been right.
And she would have been right.
Yeah.
She would have been. And so after running it by Nathan, I went, I'm pulling the plug, man. And really, honestly, one of the biggest things was I was going to slow you guys down, and y'all were going to get so late back to the car because I was going to be so slow on that descent. And that was a huge thing. It's like, I can't do this to these guys because it'll be 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like. So I launched off on the 4 mile hike. And so, I've hiked alone plenty. And I really, once I made the decision, didn't question it. I was like, this was the right decision. The reason I didn't want to make the decision is how it appeared. How it appeared. Yeah. So that's why that was the hardest part. But once I made it and ran it by Nathan, kind of got his blessing, I was like, okay, I'm doing it. So, hiking back, it was a little weird. Hiking by yourself. I think we've all hiked by ourselves at some point. So I whistled for about 2 miles. How great thou art.
Nice.
It made me feel better.
Nice.
For one reason, it calmed me, and another reason, I'm like, Oh wait, I think it was Kincaid, and Kincaid earlier in the day said, "Hey, you know what they do with the bears in the Smokies?
That's right.
That get around people and eat their stuff? They put them in the Cohuttas." Yeah. I'm like, "Oh great, I've got bears here that aren't afraid of people. That's awesome." So I immediately started thinking of what Kincaid had said, and so I whistled so one they would hear me. I didn't want to sneak up on one, and but the hike, it solidified my idea because my hike out was painful to my knees. And so I was like, yeah, but, I wasn't mentally feeling bad about my decision at all. And my question for you guys was, when I got to the car, and it may have been because I was by myself, that drive back, I was about to fall asleep.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay. I was like, man, I was like slapping myself in the head going, I've got to stay awake.
Yeah, we'll get into that for sure.
But
Yeah,
I
man.
thought, if I can chime in,
Yeah.
It showed a lot of wisdom and precaution on Jeff's part, even before the trip, to say, hey, my intent is to finish this, but I'm also recognizing where I am. Maybe we should take 2 vehicles so that I'm, A, not sitting at this trail intersection while you guys finish a hike, or B, we're not cutting the whole thing short for everyone. And then I know Jeff well enough to know, after the descent, we have the first major crossing, and we have some miles that are pretty flat, and seemingly your knee's not bothering you in those miles. We're moving really quick,
Right.
and so that's a tough place to make a decision to cut your trip short, because in that moment you feel fine. You're really having to forecast out and say, I know enough to know that how I feel now isn't, the terrain that I'm experiencing now isn't what's coming, and to kind of make a decision based on the future versus just what you feel in the moment. And again, kind of what we talked about, knowing that there's, with that, some disappointment that you're feeling in yourself, not being able to do the trip. And I don't know, tough spot to be, but hands down the right decision.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I could have only imagined like the energy shift that you had to have felt from being with this group of your brothers out in the woods to all of a sudden, within a split second, a single turn, being all by yourself. And it's not that you, I by no means would any of us had been necessarily afraid in that situation,
Right.
but it's just that energy, you had to have felt the energy shift, because there's so much power within this group of men,
Yeah. I'm a pretty firm believer of being in a relationship, just in my life. Being mentored and mentoring, that type of deal. And so it just with my faith as well. And so to be, I don't think anybody should be alone for that long, because it's what I believe.
Yeah.
And so the dynamic of the group was right.
Yeah.
On Saturday, and I'm with Nathan, the small group. Another person would have thrown it off in my mind. So you hate to leave that dynamic, because all of a sudden it's just my dynamic, and it's to whistle and be scared of bears, and it did. There was a lonely feeling. That's probably why I whistled, because I needed to hear.
Yeah.
I need to hear something, because it's fun hiking, because you can hear all these conversations, and then Luke and I had a great conversation going on my descent when my knees were killing me. Luke and I were having a great conversation about an upcoming event that's in his life you do gain energy from that, and it was gone pretty quickly when I got on the trail.
It is a huge shift, and it's just the power of people and conversation and fellowship is so powerful, and I've experienced it so many times in ultra running and, SEAL training and SEAL teams. And, it's definitely should not be, I guess, underrated. So if you find yourself in a hard spot, surround yourself with the right people, and you're going to make it a whole lot further.
Oh, absolutely.
Than you ever could by yourself. So, yeah. So Jeff makes that decision and breaks off, heads back toward the truck, and we launch off back into the wilderness for this second loop. And it's already been a long day. And we're launching off. We're like, this is the point of no return.
Right.
When we step off from this intersection, we got to complete this loop. And we knew that it was going to be well into the night before we got back. But we decided to step off. And Luke, if I remember right, brother, this was kind of the place where your hip really started, talking to you, man, going along, along the Jacks River there. Talk to me just a little bit about what was going on there as that kind of flared up and started talking to you, and mentally, what did it do to you, and how you worked through it, man.
Yeah, I think for me, my hip had been bothering me for a few weeks, and Mahoney had given me some ibuprofen, which after about an hour that kicked in, was feeling better. And then as that started to wear again, and as we started to climb, I don't know if we need to get to East Cowpen at this point yet or not, but just
I think we can get it. We can get to that down the road.
As we started to climb again, I started to struggle again, and I think the thing for me was that it got to the point where I didn't have the mobility in my right leg that I needed. So every time we came to a tree crossing or an obstacle, I was kind of having to time my steps and strategize how I was going to get across it and allow my left foot to lead, and so that was just kind of mentally taxing to have to be kind of that focused and always forward thinking, and it was slowing me down too, which was frustrating. But
and you and I, along that section on the Jacks River, shortly after Jeff broke off, you and I got to share some conversation, man, that I think is very valuable to the listeners. And if you'd be willing to share it with the listeners, I think it would add a lot to their life. And it was about leadership and about how you treat your team members within your business, and being a good leader, and learning how to love on people when it's necessary. Do you mind sharing with us just your philosophy on that, man? Because that really impacted me, that 10 minutes of conversation that we had with each other.
Yeah, this is kind of a new chapter in my story, I guess I could say. It's, kind of been evolving in the last year and a half, and it's honestly in a big part to the people that I've been surrounded with in the last few years of my life. A lot of people have sown into me, and I'm thankful for that, and I feel like God's doing a work in me. But I've always been maybe a little more old school, and I work in construction, and things are a little rougher, and I've just always been a part of that. But in the last year and a half, I've learned that, people need to be loved on and built up and appreciated and encouraged, and you got to find people's strengths and weaknesses and try to put them in positions to succeed, and help build up their self-esteem and who they are, make them feel their strengths and feel strong in them. And I haven't always been very good at that, and it's pretty humbling when I found that out about myself. And so I've just been on a journey in the last year or so to hopefully improve my leadership skills, so that I can help develop other people's leadership skills, so that they can help develop other people, and, hopefully so that we can take the brokenness, in our workforce or in our communities, and, help put people back together and and build them up and allow them to contribute to other people's lives. So
that's so powerful, brother. And I think you shared with me also, Luke, that how much the productivity has went up since you've switched that leadership model. I think you said you did more with less people this past, and you can tell the story about how much it went up. You know?
Yeah, we did more work in 2019 with a smaller crew, with less workforce. So that was pretty astounding to me, just to see, honestly, just when people feel loved and appreciated and communicated to, and everyone knows what the goal is or what the mission is, and we're all on the same page, how much that can change things, make things more efficient, make people work harder. It's really been a lot of fun to see,
Yeah, that's so powerful, man. That's just, and that resonated so much with me, and I think that lesson that you shared with me there along the Jacks River will stay with me the rest of my life, especially when I'm in a position to lead. So thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, we carry on down Jacks River. We go across the falls. Kincaid's analyzing the falls because they've never been kayaked before. And he's like, yeah, man, if it was just a little bit more water, I think that it would be passable. And so that was cool to hear him talk about that and see him get a little fired up and, really analyze. That's a pretty intense waterfall right there, man. And then we kind of break off the Jacks River. We get to our last water source, our final water source. Kincaid, you knew where that was, and you were pimping us on it. And we all stop and top off, and then we go up through this next section of trail, and it literally looks like a freaking nuclear bomb had went off, dude. Walk us through that, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, we crossed the last that crossing at Jackson. We turn onto Rice Camp, which typically, there's some trees down, but I mean, your words, that's true. I mean, it's like complete devastation, whether it's from some fire and wind or whether it's a beetle. I don't know what it is, but a lot of that wilderness is decimated right now. And so it's so much so that I've walked past the turn initially and then saw the river, and I was like, oh, that's a really pretty spot. I don't think I've ever noticed it before, and really quickly realized it's because that's not the way of this route. So we turned around, but it's a section of trail that you're thinking, it's uphill, but it's easy trail more or less, and you're going to kind of make some time, and it just wasn't that way. Right out of the gates, there were tons of trees down, and we just really fought our way up up Rice Camp entirely. I mean, I don't remember the mileage exactly. Is it 4.5 or 5 miles? And it didn't, particularly that lower section, kind of lower up through the middle, just wasn't giving mileage easy. And then that took us, we fought our way through it, and then transition at the top of that onto East Cowpen. I think I made mention to, in my mind, East Cowpen's kind of, you climb a little bit at the beginning, and then it's more or less flat, and it's kind of a wide old roadbed, and then you're at Hickory Ridge, and it's much more of a climb, a sustained climb than I remembered. And I think that, for me anyway, that section is kind of where things start to get long mentally. You start to feel the wear and tear of the day, and starting to lose light, the light's shifting, and so that's an interesting section, I guess, at least for Luke, and I had some good conversation on it. And I don't know, it's not been said that Chad, you and Kincaid are of the group easily the most fit. So I'm not sure where y'all's heads were as the miles wore on, if this was at all fatiguing or if you were just ready to get back to the car.
I mean, I was definitely getting tired. It was a long day. No matter what, I think anybody would probably be tired. I can't speak for Chad, but I mean, I was definitely.
Oh, I wasn't tired at all, dude.
Yeah.
Keep going.
But I mean, yeah, it's just when you're outside for that long, I think no matter, what you're doing, we had been outside for probably close to 12 hours at that point. And making decisions for a long time, even if it's not something that's physically taxing, mentally, just making those decisions and assessments can wear on you as well. I think I was definitely feeling that, just, trying to manage my own nutrition and hydration and, just assessing the different situations that we were coming across. And I was certainly a little frustrated, just from seeing all those downed trees. I was wearing shorts, so, anytime there was a downed tree, we had to like scramble through the woods or go over. I was getting pretty beat up. So it's definitely just like, frustration, if nothing else. I think, if the trail had been good, it'd been one thing, but we were just working with what we had and trying to make the best of it. So,
Yeah, and so a lot of times these endurance type of missions, they literally come down to patience. And I think with all the down trees, that was really an opportunity for me personally to practice my patience, because like Kincaid said, not only were they physically taxing to, crawl across and over and scramble around these things, but it was just like, man, it's one after the other. When are we going to get to a clean piece of trail? And you literally just had to maintain that patience to say, okay, well, I'm just going to get over this next tree and see what's on the other side. And man, going up that Cowpen Trail. Luke, do you remember what you named that trail, man?
I think I called it East. Feel like I want to roll around in the Cowpen Trail.
That was not a super like steep pinch right there, but it was a sustained difficult climb. And was that a low point for you, Luke?
Probably my lowest point. I was really struggling at that point. And you guys had kind of, it was getting to where that trail was kind of, you'd get up to a bend and if you weren't with everyone, you would lose sight of everyone. So it was kind of, if you guys would get around the bend, then I would have a stretch there where I just felt isolated. I probably wasn't more than 50 yards from you guys, maybe 75 at the most, but it felt like so much farther, and so, my head started playing games with me at that point. And I was struggling physically. Those climbs, it was hard for me to rehydrate and maintain nutrition. And that was just a long uphill stretch right there. And I was hurting at that point. And before we got to the top, I had started cramping, and at that point, I had Nathan with me. And, it was incredible, him dropping back there with me. There's strength in numbers, we can do more together than we can alone. You could just keep naming the cliches, but having him there with me, he just started talking to me. We started having a conversation, and it wasn't even about what my body was feeling anymore at that point. We were just fellowshipping, and we were talking and we were sharing our hearts with each other, and we just kept moving. And he shared some electrolyte replacements with me too, which was fantastic. But it just it was really amazing to me. I don't like to ask for help, but I feel like everyone helped me at some point on this journey, and I feel like that's a beautiful picture of life too, because we don't get through it alone. People are always helping us and contributing to our story. And so true on this hike. And I just feel like, everyone's got different gifts and talents and strengths. And, as we share those, that's ultimately how the body of Christ is supposed to work, and I hope I was able to contribute something to you guys. I felt pretty weak throughout most of that, and I felt like I was mostly taken. But I was super appreciative of everything that each one of you gave to me over the course of those 14 hours. Couldn't have done it, honestly, without you. So,
no truer words ever been spoken, brother. I agree with you 100%. And that was I guess the last really like sustained, arduous climb of the mission, wasn't it, Nathan?
Yeah. Yeah. And there are a few things that I think about. There's a quote from Thoreau it's pretty famous. I went into the woods because I wished to live deliberately. But he goes on, and later on he says, nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. And I think at that point in the day and the number of trees that you encountered, I mean, that's kind of what I thought is like, you just have to be resigned to the fact that these trees are here. You can't really speed up the way that you go around them. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. And you got to shift down and be patient with it and resign yourself to this reality and not let it beat against you mentally. And then I knew, I mean, I was feeling tired that section. And there was a comment, probably the last time we did this hike, we had completed a section, and Jeff and I were talking, and he used this phrase. He said, my demons really came out to play on that last section. And I just love that terminology because I think, all of us have, to use that phrase, demons that kind of come out to play with us mentally, whether it's, self-deprecating thoughts or I find when we're struggling mentally and physically in a task, it tends to take us to either things that are really important to us, kind of come to mind, or we think about things that we're struggling with in the broader context of life. So, being who I am and kind of as part of what I do, when I get to engage with someone and talk like that, I wouldn't have wanted for anything better than for the conversation that Luke and I had. And it came out of both of us being tired and being worn down enough to just be really honest and transparent and not really worried about what the other thought. And so I think those are the moments that I live for. And I think I said to you at some point, to use terminology that your listeners are used to, is we weren't given voice to pain in a physical sense, but we were taking what the physical pain was producing mentally and emotionally, then led to really meaningful conversation. And I think that, epitomizes the essence of what these trips are for me. And those are the moments that physical challenge is important and beneficial, not because it's hard and you overcome, or not just that, but because it leads to this deeper introspection and conversation and community and brotherhood. And so it was one of those moments. And to your point, Luke, I think when you're in that position, you feel like you're getting so much from the rest of the group. You're just not aware of what you're giving. And all of us, to a man, would say, you gave far more than you took over the course of the day. And it wouldn't have been the same trip without you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, going back to what Luke was talking about, Luke was pretty hilarious the entire trip. I feel like every time, we kind of caught our breath, Luke would have something pretty witty to say about what we just went through or his current situation. And he was super generous the whole time too, like offering food to people. And, he had these peanut butter honey tortillas that I don't know how many he ate, but he seemed to have enough that he wanted to share with people. And he was really generous with that. So I really appreciate Luke for that. And just his humor. I mean, I feel like when you're tired and frustrated and out in the woods all day and hungry, and, it can be really hard to be funny or say something funny, but every time he came around, it just made me smile. He would say something pretty funny that'd get a chuckle out of me for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and then when Nathan's planning this, we start immediately going, well, who do we want? And it's like, Luke, because he's got to come on. He's the dynamic that if he's not there, it's thrown off, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. He's got to be there, or it's not a trip.
Right.
Well, and that humor thing, so that's something that we used a lot in the SEAL teams, man, and in SEAL training. Like, no matter how bad it would get, there's going to be some dude there like Luke that is going to crack a joke, and then it's going to change the whole dynamic of the team. Whether it was real world downrange or whether it was in training, you got to have those guys contribute so much to morale through that humor. And I don't have that within me. Like I say something funny like twice a year, dude. Like it's just not in my wheelhouse, man. But Yeah, I mean some of the stuff that Luke would pop off with. I mean, we can't share it here. Not that it was super vulgar, inappropriate, but it was just just absolutely would have you rolling, man. And then I think to your point, Nathan, you talk about how that physical activity, it really does, man. It strips away all the barriers that we put up around ourselves and all the walls that we put in between each other. Like that adversity, that physical pain, literally those walls crumble, man. And that's where we can have real, true conversation. That's where we can really be open to one another and learn from one another. And that's where that brotherhood is formed. It's because of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and I think that why do the listeners need to know that? I mean, if you have a company, say you have a company, provide an environment for physical activity for your employees, to work together as a team and to work through something that's physically taxing, to get them out of their comfort zone, to allow these walls to crumble between them, because then that's where that brotherhood's going to form or sisterhood's going to form. And then that in turn is going to transfer into that office environment or whatever the actual job is, like after the mission that we all did together, like I feel like we could start a company tomorrow and like conquer the world, man. Like that's the way I feel about it. But yeah, no doubt, man. So we get to the top of the mountain. I sit on a log while I sit on a log hammering rugged meats, beef jerky, snack sticks, and little sausage links while Kincaid eats his nuts and seeds and berries. Kincaid's a vegetarian. He fueled properly out there. This Chucker had like avocado.
What was it, like basil, avocado, sun-dried tomato?
Yeah.
What was it?
It was just like an avocado hummus sandwich. It's pretty simple, really.
What was the what was the other one? Blackberry.
I did have a blackberry, like peanut butter honey sandwich as well.
You grew the blackberries, didn't you?
This Chucker had a backpack what folded open, and it won't nothing but food. Grapefruits, packets of Justin's almond butter, hazelnut butter, like whole oranges, 16 sandwiches. They want nothing in his bag but food, and it was all whole food.
Yeah, he was talking about my generosity, but he was like he was like the Whole Foods store, and he was just giving it all away. He wasn't even making you buy it. He was totally sharing everything.
I think it's because I was getting so tired. My pack was so heavy with food.
Hey, that grapefruit was on point up there, though, wasn't it, man? You remember that thing?
Grapefruit was fantastic.
Yeah, I never would have thought
that was
that
good
would have been
timing.
so good. Yeah. So, yeah, we get to the top of that climb, but, we start our descent to the river, and we had a section up the last mile or so of that climb that was pretty clean trail.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't bad at all. And we hit the summit when we start down, and dude, that was probably the worst section of trails, in my opinion, when it came to the down trees. And that's where we were really just following just barely a trace of a trail.
Yeah, I think at one point you said, I don't know, I could be on a hog trail.
Yeah.
I have no idea if this is right or not.
It literally looked like a game trail. And of course, there again, the just crisscrossed with these massive pine trees. I found a fly fishing pole. I thought that was pretty cool. Kincaid had been teaching me how to fly fish throughout the day, and I was fired up about that. But anyways, yeah, we're headed down. This is kind of our final descent pretty much.
Yeah.
And the light starts to change. It starts to get dark on us. And you guys had been saying that whole descent, oh, we're going to make it to the river before dark. We're going to make it to the river before dark. So it gets dark. I'm talking about it gets pitch dark. and I cut my headlamp on, and you guys refused to put a headlamp on. because you wanted to, I guess, what were you guys thinking? You guys were literally walking. You guys were crawling over massive dead pine trees, following a pig trail in the pitch dark, freaking 10 miles away from the nearest fire road. What was going on there? I was like, what in the world?
I think Kincaid or Luke should answer that.
I mean, for me, it just kind of comes down to being stubborn, I think. I told everybody I was pretty sure we'd make it to the river before dark, and I feel like getting out of the headlamp was admitting it was dark. And I guess I don't really like to be wrong. I mean, I could kind of see. I feel like I knew I was still going downhill, and I knew as long as I kept going downhill, the river was going to be down there eventually.
Honestly, I was just so amazed by Kincaid's optimism at that point and how exhausted I was and how determined he was to get there before dark. There was no way I was getting my headlamp out just because I knew he did not want me to.
I think we all said that the three of us made it to the river by dark, but Chad didn't. You know, Chad got there after dark.
Yeah, dude. So, no, I mean, that was really impressive. That was really impressive. I was like, these cats are about to break an ankle up here because they're so stubborn they won't put a headlamp on. But I was like, roger that. I'm not here to babysit. And we rock and rolled, and I'll be dang if you guys didn't hike for a good half hour in the pitch freaking dark. And we made it down to the river, and that was that big crossing that we discussed earlier. You know, and yeah, I think we hit that crossing pretty good. That was that final river crossing. Yeah. That was kind of hairy. Kincaid was taking care of us, had to throw a rope out. It was intense, no doubt. I mean, I'm looking at Kincaid. We stop on the side of the river. We get a little food. You guys finally put your headlamps all on. And then Kincaid bails off into this river and is literally like 2 steps and he's tits deep. and we hadn't been more than waist deep all day, and it was cold. I mean, that water was freaking cold, man. And I'm like, what is this cat doing? And that was before he had explained to me about the foot entrapment, and you know, you can potentially drown in 6 inches of fast current if your foot gets trapped. So he actually knew what he was doing. And it was my ignorance that I was like, man, this joker is taking a swim, man. And, but yeah, we all get across and then take us from there. Nathan?
Yeah, so that part of the, you know, I think the trail crosses downstream, kind of diagonally to the left of this makes no sense to the listeners, but from where we crossed upstream of the trail. And so we cross, and immediately you're kind of staring at this this bank or this, you know, big piece of rock. And so, you know, we basically moved downstream far enough to find a slope that we could crawl up, knowing that the trail that we need is just above us. We just got to go uphill and we'll find it. So we do that and cruise back down, backtrack just for not long, probably not even a quarter of a mile, back to the trail intersection that leads us to the trail that we go out. We got about 4 miles from there.
Hold on. I don't think you gave that scramble up that freaking cliff justice. Talk about that scramble up the cliff from the river real quick, Luke. You got to remember,
free.
Dude.
It was free.
You did not give that justice, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more just trying to grab at vines and trees. It's pretty much no footing, so it's pretty much all arms at that point, which I guess maybe was a good thing because our legs were exhausted. You know, our upper body hadn't had a lot of work, so you know, it's pitch dark and it was just purely loose sole. I think if I remember correctly, it was just loose sole, and it was just kind of grabbing from tree to tree to tree to pull yourself up the top of the hill, maybe 20 feet. I don't know, 15,
Sounds
20
good.
feet, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I looked over at Nathan and I was like, dude, where's the trail? And he was like, well, I know if we go up that cliff right there that we'll eventually hit the trail. And I was like, roger that, man. Take off. And it was sheer. It was like a sheer vertical climb for like 20 straight feet. So that was pretty legit,
It
man.
was good.
Yeah.
You got us there quick.
Yeah, it did. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Nathan.
No.
I just
So-
didn't want to.
We set out on our last 4 miles, and I happened to be in the front at that point. We were all moving really, really good, and we're all tired. And so I just thought in my mind, let's set kind of a fast pace. I guess going back, that last section, I think the last time I did this, it just felt forever to me mentally. And so probably in an attempt to not have that happen again, I was like, well, I'm just going to kind of lay down a little bit of a tempo and see if we can hold it, knowing that all of us, would hike slower if I hiked slower. We did. I mean, we probably at 4 miles an hour, give or take, for that last section. And, you and I got to have some really good conversation. I shared about stuff that's been going on in my world for a little bit. And it honestly, went by really quick for me. I don't know what.
Yeah, what was going on back there with you guys? Because, me and Nathan, we really got deep into some great conversation. Again, those barriers were broken down, and, man, he was setting a really good pace, and we were just clicking, man. I mean, it was just boom, boom. And before we knew it, we were at the top. You guys were probably, maybe, I don't know, a couple 100 yards behind us. How was that last section for y'all?
It was great for us, I thought. Luke and I had some great conversation, too. It was really good kind of getting to know him a little bit better throughout that day and just talk about the road we live on. I think we live in a good part of the country, and we're kind of able just to talk about that place a little bit that we like to call home. I really learned a lot about Luke and, like, his business model, how he treats his employees, and just really learned a lot from him about that and life in general. Luke's a little older than me, so I feel like he was really able to give me some great advice for the years coming up, and I really appreciated that. I thought it was a good hike. I enjoyed it. It's kind of in the dark. We had our headlamps out on, but there weren't a lot of trees on that section, so it was pretty easy going, really.
Yeah, I felt like we were moving pretty good, and I'd kind of been watching Kincaid all day, and we've worked out at the gym together, a lot over the years, and he's always really impressed me. But we hadn't had a lot of one-on-one conversations, it's just kind of good job, hey, it's good to see you today, whatever kind of thing. And so it was good just to spend that hour kind of talking to him, getting to know him a little bit. And, also just I got to share with him, a little bit of the good qualities that I saw in him as the day progressed, I mean, he just really time and time again throughout that whole trip, I mean, he was just an anchor. I mean, he just never faltered, never wavered, never failed. I mean, he was full of strengths. He was full of optimism. He was generous. He was giving. He was sharing. And it was fun for me to watch him, and I admired that at 24 years old, how polished he is, and I just think he has a bright future. And, it was just fun to spend that time with him and kind of get to talk about where he's at and where he's hoping to go and things of that nature. So I enjoyed it. Went by fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did fly by, and I think traveling at night like that, hiking at night, that's actually one of my favorite times to hike. I'll actually sometimes go out and intentionally start a hike at dark and just hike through the night, because your world gets condensed down to this little bubble of light that's right in front of you. And you can't look up at the mountain. You can't look up at the mile of trail that may be visible in front of you. You're just focused, again, like we hit on earlier, where you're going to take that next step. Where's your foot going on that next step? And, I think that's a healthy thing for us as humans. Again, that's a lesson that we can take off, from the trail is that night hiking. It just keeps you so present and just keeps you in that little bubble of light that's right in front of you. And, maybe that contributes to those great conversations. But it definitely contributes to our ability, I think, to stay present and focus on our next step in life,
What I was going to ask you, I out and out asked Kincaid as we were hiking, I mean, what's your perspective as someone who could have done this quicker? You know, you're in great shape. Is it difficult for you to shift gears, particularly as the day drags on, to be like, I could have been done with this hours ago if it weren't for these yahoos?
Well, Nathan, that's a really good question, man. And to be honest with you, it's not difficult for me. I actually enjoy like that pace, like that we were doing, because you don't understand. Like, running is great, but you miss a lot when you're running. Like you don't see a lot of things that you see when you're at that pace that we were at. And I say we were fast packing. We weren't necessarily hiking. We were moving with a purpose the entire day. It wasn't hike 45 minutes, stop and take a 10-minute break or 20-minute break and eat food. Like, it was a constant forward motion pretty much the whole day. I enjoyed it. I feel like, for our listeners that are ultra runners, I would challenge you guys to go out and do something like this, because, again, you slow down, you get to see more, you get to have conversation with your friends, your brothers, your sisters, and it's all about time on your feet, man. It's really, when it comes to endurance events, ultra running, 100-mile races, whatever it is, it's all about time on your feet. So, I'll be straight up with you, man. Like, my calves were sore the next day. Like, I was sore. So I get a lot out of going out and spending, gosh, whatever we spent. I mean, what was it, 14, 15?
14 hours,
Yeah.
14 and change.
Yeah, 14 and some change. I get a lot. I feel like I get a lot of fitness out of it. And then all the other things, that you don't get when you're running and you're focused on training and you're focused on heart rate and mileage and all that, So I really enjoyed it. And it just reminds me of that time that Luke was hiking up the mountain and he got a cramp in his tricep.
Total body.
This cat. Go ahead, Luke.
I mean, I really don't know how it happens. I get weird cramps in weird places that it shouldn't happen. I don't understand it. I mean, I really don't.
That was so epic, dude. Sweet. All right. And hey, we'll follow through with this thing. We got to the truck. No glory at the truck, man. It wasn't like, let's all gather around and sing a song and give each other hugs. Like, no, it was like, rejock, man.
We did that our first year. We had the intent. We had a cooler of some drinks, just a little celebratory, one. And we got up there, and then it started pouring, and we had been out 15 plus hours. We just got in the truck and left. I mean, we've done it every time, thinking we're going to celebrate. There's no celebration at all.
I
left a rain jacket up there.
Dry cotton and go home.
That's right, baby.
Yeah.
Most dangerous part of the trip is the drive home, for sure.
Oh, man. So here we go. Yep, we rejock at the top, jumping Luke's flatbed at this point. And the next thing I remember, we're going down this literally like single track fire road, like switchbacking down this massive mountain. This thing's got like trees blown down across it that are just like sawed barely wide enough to get his truck through, like barely wide enough. It's rutted out and like nasty. And Luke takes a turn on one of them switchbacks, and I'm like, hey, bud, you better watch your right side over here. Because I look down, and his tire's literally 3 inches away from like a sheer 500-foot drop. And, so that's a hairy ride, man, for sure, especially after, all that time on your feet. And we end up making it down to the bottom of the mountain. Finally, we're going down this road, and Luke keeps saying, this thing turns into pavement somewhere. He's like, this road turns into pavement, and then it turns back into gravel. And then he's like, oh, this is the pavement section right here. And I'm like, hold on a minute. Like, we're still riding on gravel. But it was
smooth gravel.
he was like, "Oh yeah, this is this paved section." I was like, I didn't want to be rude and say like, "No, man, we're still on gravel here." And yeah, at that point, I think Luke was a little bit tired at that point. So
Yeah, I couldn't have driven us. I was intermittently asleep / hallucinating maybe by the time we got home.
I think I was too.
yeah,
I just tried to keep moving.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. So a common theme throughout this entire story, Kincaid, basically he knows his way around up there, and Luke's like, "Hey man," or no, Kincaid I think was like, "Hey, do you need directions?" And Luke was like, "Well, I think I know where I am, but I'm not going to be mad at you if you tell me where to turn." So Kincaid basically guides us out of there, and finally make it to civilization. And we get to this town. What was it? Chatsworth?
Chatsworth.
Yeah, we get to Chatsworth. And Chatsworth is composed of a Bojangles, a Taco Bell, and a Wendy's. And we're all starving to death. So we pull in Wendy's and all order these massive, greasy Baconator, whatever, hamburgers. Kincaid gets a dang Frosty. He doesn't even get any food. He just gets a Frosty because he's been eating his avocados all day. And we pull in the drive-through, like, to the window, and I'm like, we're all, like, trying to get our money out. And Luke's like, "I don't want your money." And we're like, "Oh, no, man, hold on. We got some cash." He's like, "I don't want your money." He's like, "What did you say, Luke?"
I think I said, "You'll just keep me awake and get me home," or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
and you can keep your money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys will keep me awake and get me home alive, you can keep your money.
Yeah.
So the whole drive home, I think we're just we're trying to spark up conversation about anything that we can think of to talk about in order to keep each other awake. You guys got anything on the drive?
I think Chad caught a stop sign pretty good. I think Luke would have stopped eventually, but
Well,
Chad was looking out for us from the back seat for sure.
he saw the stop sign, but the stop sign was not registering with him.
Yeah. Seemed like a suggestion at the time.
Yeah.
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 No, I really like. I was not doing any good keeping anyone awake. If I don't have to drive, I'll give it a old college try to keep someone awake, but eventually sleep will win. I was in and out of sleep the whole way home.
Yeah. Yeah, it was quite a ride. It was about a 2-hour drive from the car back to Luke's driveway, where we had all met at about 4 a.m. that morning. And time we pull up in Luke's driveway, it's probably after midnight. And again, we all get out of the truck, and Luke looks over at us, and he's like, "Hey guys, please send me a text when you get home safe." I'm like, "What the world, dude? We just crossed some of the most rugged country in North Georgia, and crossed 17 rivers and like all this, and now Luke wants to be worried about us." Like, he's like, "Man, I just worry about stuff." So I know when I got back to the house, I sent Luke a text, and I think Nathan did too.
Yeah.
And Kincaid just rode his bike home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I just lived down the road. It wasn't too far of a bike ride.
Yeah. So, and Luke actually responded
Yeah.
to our text.
I was still awake. I was waiting. I was waiting on your text messages.
So what, guys? So after a day like that, and Jeff, you can chime in on this too. I mean, what's when you guys you get back in your house, you get a shower, you take a wrap off. Not necessarily that night, but maybe the next day. Like, what's going through your head? How are you processing this? What does it do to you? What does it do for you? How do you process? Because not everybody, not everybody that goes on a mission like this gets to sit down and have an after actions report like we're doing here today. So I think something for me, I'll start it off, and then I want to hear what all you guys say. But for me, when you go out on a mission like this, man, you have to take into consideration what's going to happen when it's over, because you're on this high. And Nathan, on a later podcast, I want to talk to you about the AT. And Nathan's through hike the AT, but you're on this high, and then once mission complete, you're back at home, and the next morning you got to wake up and go to your everyday job. You have to be aware that there can potentially be some depression or some just down feelings that you're going to encounter, because you've been surrounded by your people, and you've been out, on this magnificent journey, and you've accomplished this great thing. And I get it a lot with ultra running, with missions that we do. The next day is usually hard for me, because I'm processing it, and I'm coming down off of this, really just euphoric, happy feeling, disconnected from technology, disconnected from any type of responsibility. And I'll have a moment where I'll just be poopy pants, dude. And I'm just like, but I don't fight it. I recognize it. I expect it, and I bask in it. And yeah, so that's usually what happens to me the day after a mission like this. And yeah, this chalk talk, this AAR really helps me hash it out and like get it all out of my system. It's an amazing thing. So, round table.
I see the day after I do something like this. It's a little different with a go ruck that we've done, because after one of those, I'm like, I'm done with that for a year. But there's something about the Cohutta that the day after, and Nathan and I have told each other, when we see each other, we'll do it on a Saturday, we'll see each other on a Monday, and I'll go, you ready to go back? He goes, yep. I mean, it's immediate. We're ready to go back. I mean, I had that even just doing half the trip this year, Sunday, even though we all were hurting the calves, everything, I was ready to go back, because it is so life-giving, that trip. Not only the Cohuttas, because it's just a magical place for me, but the day with guys and being, getting to know each other, suffering a little bit together always brings everybody closer. And I think guys crave that. People that don't get it, I feel bad for. So that day after, I'm like ready to go. Now I couldn't. I can't walk down to my mailbox, but the yearn is there.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really appreciative that I get the chance to, because I know I don't get to do it near as often as I want to, just in my stage of life and what I'm doing, having 2 teenage kids and on all that. I mean, life is busy. And so when I get out there, it really is I'm just like, oh, give it to me. So that's kind of the way I feel the day after.
That's good.
I mean, I kind of can reiterate what Jeff and Chad were saying, but usually before the event's over, I'm trying to think of something else to do for an excuse to get back in the woods. And this was like, I don't know, it was so much fun. I just want to get back and do it again, I would say. So I was trying to talk people into doing this 3 fish and 3 different drainages in the Cohuttas. Another little loop where you try to catch some fish in all the different watersheds. But so I was trying to do that before we were even back to the truck, I think. But I was definitely moving a little slower that next day, and I was really thankful for getting to know, each person out there a little bit better. And I told my parents that they have a really cool neighbor, getting to know Luke a little bit better. I was like, y'all got a cool neighbor. So it was just a real good day, I told my girlfriend about it, and, encourage people to get out and try something similar, get out and push themselves, find some friends, and have a good day out in the woods.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that comes out of it for me. If I were to try to pick just a few, it would be, on the one hand, there's that sense that you mentioned, and I think, again, as much as I can, use terminology that your listeners may be familiar with. I think you say it doesn't matter in a different context, but there's that same sense when you go back off the trail and you're back home, the people that you encounter as you move through that day, it doesn't really matter. It didn't matter to my 6-year-old when he came tugging on me the next morning to wake up. It didn't matter to him if I was tired or what I had done. If you're going to work so bearing in mind, I had this amazing life-giving experience, and I'm going to encounter a whole bunch of people the next day that it doesn't really matter to them that I did. But is there a way that I can make it matter in terms of it gave life to me, so then am I in a better spot to give life to them? As I've got 3 small kids, and so I think, if I'm taking time away from them and I'm setting aside a time that is really important for me to, to kind of be who I am, then it ought to inform my relationship as a father to them, and it ought to inform how I am as a husband to my wife. So I need to give the life that it gives me, I need to somehow give it back and take lessons that come through community or through endurance, and be more patient with them, or kind of transfer what I endured on the trail to enduring with people around me and giving life. And then I think there's a piece of it as a parent that I want my kids to think that's normal. Like, you go and you do these big things and hard things. I want them to see scratched up legs and say, "Oh, is that from your hike?" And say, "Yeah," and it was fine. This is part of it, and it's worth it. And so I want that to be normal for them as a parent, so that as they grow up, they value these things and do these things and see it not as a some big crazy thing that you shouldn't do, but this is absolutely what we do because it's important. So I think those are a few things anyway that I kind of settle on at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think for me, I think probably my biggest struggle outside of soreness was just kind of the reality of reconnecting to technology and the outside world. I mean, it's pretty peaceful out there. It's just some guys in the woods, and so that part I think was a little bit of a struggle, but I really enjoyed, kind of throughout that day having moments of self-reflection and just reflection and just remembering conversations and, what people did or what people said or the moments that we shared together, and kind of cherishing those and really even just being able to share some of those with my wife, like you're talking about kind of that life that gave you and then bringing that back, and, as exhausted as I was, as tired as I was, as sore as I was, being able to share some of those stories and, watch her laugh about it or, whatever. I mean, it's pretty fun. You kind of put yourself through that, and you suffer a lot for a long time, but then when you get on the back side of it, you almost immediately look at it and you're like, well, it wasn't that bad, and I'll kind of echo what Jeff said. I've done a couple of those go rucks and I say never again, and but with this, I mean, it really wasn't that way. I mean, I don't even know that I said it while we were there, maybe just hopefully next time I'll be a little better prepared, but not never again. That was a really, really special Saturday for me. It was a lot of fun, and I felt like a lot of growth. So it's pretty beautiful, really.
Yeah, so all very, very powerful takeaways, guys. Processing it on not only the journey, but processing it on the back end. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is what a long day in the Cohutta Wilderness looks like. And I want to leave you guys with one thing. You guys have maybe heard me talk about or see me posting recently about we control the fear. So fear is a real thing. Like not only going out on these missions, but obviously with what's happening in our society today. So and I want to get your comments. You sent me a text the other day. So we control the fear. I view fear as this tangible thing. It's almost like a bubble. You can create it. You can feed it. You can get trapped in it. Or you can crush it beneath your feet. That's what I mean when I say we control the fear. It's a tangible thing, but we're in control. It's our decision. And do you remember the text you sent me?
Yeah.
I just want you to hit on your, because I think that was a powerful addition to my standpoint on that statement.
Yeah, it was funny because you you posted that later in the day, or I saw it. I'm not sure when you posted it, and for some reason that morning, my 6-year-old, as I was fixing coffee, just out of the blue said, "Daddy, are you afraid of anything?" Now 6-year-old doesn't understand. He can't understand the abstract things that I am afraid of. I'm afraid of failure and mediocrity and all these things. So I kind of dodged the question with him, but it made me think. And for a long time, the first part of Joshua has been just a passage that I come back to and time again. And 3 times in the passage, Joshua is implored to be strong and courageous. There's that command. And if you read the passage, it says that, and if you think through it, there wouldn't be the command to be strong and courageous if there weren't something to fear. I think often we can take the idea of fear and that we shouldn't be afraid, and we take the wrong approach and we try to minimize the thing that there is to fear, when in reality there is a lot to fear. I mean, that's the world we live in, and even the things that we don't see. There are things to fear, and so the call isn't, it's not a matter of is there something we should fear or not. There is. We're just called to a different response than fear. And then later in that passage, it says that the reason that we can respond by being bold and courageous is because of the presence of the Lord. And he says in that passage, I will never leave you or forsake you. So at least coming from it, or coming at it from the mindset of a believer, I ought to be choosing or working to choose being strong and courageous because of the strength the Lord gives me, as opposed to succumbing to fear. And I think that's one of those things that it reads really well, and in the moment when you're trying to hammer that out, that's difficult, but essential.
Totally. I love it, brother. And it goes back to the fact, man, the fear is a real thing. You got to choose what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
And anybody else want to comment on that? I mean, I think it's a powerful topic right now. So any thoughts on that, guys? All right. Easy day. Last thing I want to do, guys, if you are on social media, if you have any plans coming up, if you have a website, if you have any way for our listeners to learn more about you, follow you, reach out to you, thank you, whatever it may be, will you guys put that out to the listeners? Starting with Jeff.
I am not on social media.
No worries, brother. You can pass.
I don't have a thing against it. I just am not on it. So I'll go back in the shadows.
I mean, I am on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me if you want to, but certainly don't feel obligated to. It's just my name, so Kincaid Worrell, if you're inclined.
Hey, spell that out real quick, man.
KINCAIDWURL. 2 words.
Sick paddling videos.
Yeah. If you guys want to see some crazy, intense kayaking videos, follow Kincaid on Instagram. He puts out some pretty cool content.
And nonchalant all at the same time.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Hey, you want to give a shout out to your to the new team, man?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Shout out to Scoop Gang. We're taking down Team Jib in the Suck Creek race coming up, so watch that out. Team Jib, if you're listening, get ready for the smoke.
Probably the best place is to find Higher Ground. This is an organization I work with on Instagram and Facebook. That'll be the most content that's consistent thematically with what we've talked about. My personal stuff is just like about coffee and my kids. It's not necessarily that entertaining.
Do you know what the handle is for Higher Ground, Nathan?
It's Higher Ground with no vowels on Instagram, and I believe the same. I don't search it on Facebook; it'll come up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Unfortunately, I'm not on any social medias either. So you guys can go to Nathan's Higher Ground and leave me a message. He'll get it to me.
All right, guys. Well, outstanding conversation. Obviously, thank you all for your time. And I think the listeners are really going to love the stories. This is the 3 of 7 podcast. Enough said.